I didn't think much of it when I agreed to house sit. It was a small, charming cottage in a quiet town I'd never heard of before. The house was old, a little worn around the edges, but it had that cozy feeling. The owner said they'd be away for a week, and it seemed like the perfect opportunity to relax and enjoy some time away from the city. The first night was uneventful, but in the morning I noticed something strange. A photo frame on the mantel was tilted, just slightly. I didn't remember bumping into it, but I straightened it and moved on. I figured maybe I hadn't noticed it before. By the third day, little things started to bother me. A chair in the living room seemed to shift slightly each time I entered the room, just an inch or two. At first, I thought I was imagining it, but then one night, I woke up to the sound of the TV turning on by itself. The room was bathed in the glow of static, and I felt a chill creep up my spine. I turned it off and tried to calm myself, but the feeling of being watched lingered. It was subtle, but unsettling, like someone's eyes were on me, though I was supposed to be alone. I kept brushing it off, telling myself it was just my imagination, or maybe the house was old and creaky. But the kitchen, that was different. Each morning, I found things out of place. Cups that I hadn't touched, a spoon lying on the counter when I knew I'd put it away. I decided to do something about it. I set up my phone to record myself while I slept, hoping to catch whatever was causing these strange things. Maybe I'd see the TV turn on, or catch the chair moving. Anything to explain what was going on. The next morning, I hesitated before watching the footage. I almost didn't want to know, but I hit play. The first hour was quiet. Nothing but me fast asleep, the room still. Then, just past midnight, I saw it. A figure, shadowy and indistinct, slipped into the room. It didn't make a sound. It just stood there, at the foot of my bed, watching me. I held my breath, my heart pounding as I watched the figure stay there, unmoving, for what felt like hours. When I finally looked up, I ran to the door. It was still locked, exactly how I'd left it. That's when the fear sank in, deep and cold. Whoever, or whatever, it was hadn't broken in. They had been inside the house the entire time. I grabbed my things, ready to leave as quickly as I could. But as I turned to leave, I heard it, a faint whisper my name. It came from behind the walls. My blood ran cold. I froze, my eyes scanning the room, but I saw nothing. No one. I wasn't sure if I imagined it, or if it was real. I didn't wait to find out. I left that house as fast as I could, my heart racing the entire way to my car. To this day, I can't shake the feeling that I wasn't alone in that cottage, that someone or something had been watching me from the very beginning. I thought it would be a peaceful week. Just me, the house, and the quiet woods. The house was a huge, old mansion, tucked away deep in the forest. I had been asked to house sit while the owners were away on vacation. The first few nights were calm, almost too quiet, the kind of silence that makes you notice every little sound. It started with faint noises. I brushed it off as the house settling, like old houses do. The creaks, the soft hum of wind outside, it felt normal. But one night, I heard footsteps. Not the heavy, obvious kind, but light, careful ones, like someone trying not to be heard. I told myself it was just the old wooden floors, shifting, expanding, whatever. Then the doors. I'd close them before bed, but every morning, I'd find one or two cracked open just a little. I tested the windows, making sure there wasn't a draft. All locked. There was no explanation. Still, I convinced myself it was nothing. I didn't want to be that person who got scared of an old house. But it got worse. Late at night, I started hearing whispers. Faint, barely audible, but they were there. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I knew they were coming from behind the walls. That's when I started feeling uneasy. I'd sit in the living room, trying to distract myself with TV, but I always felt watched. One night, I saw it. I was getting ready for bed, standing in front of the mirror, brushing my hair. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed something behind me. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. But there it was, a pale, shadowy figure, standing perfectly still. My heart stopped. I spun around, but nothing. The room was empty. I told myself it was just my imagination, but the image stayed with me. The following nights, it kept happening. Every time, the figure seemed closer. Watching. Waiting. I couldn't sleep. I started keeping the lights on all night, but that only made it worse. I'd catch glimpses of it in the corners, just out of reach, always disappearing when I tried to look directly. One afternoon, I was pacing the floor, trying to shake off the unease. I noticed a loose board under the rug in the hallway. Curious, I pried it up. Beneath it, I found an old letter, yellowed with age. The handwriting was shaky, hurried. It wasn't addressed to anyone, but it was clear what it said. The person who wrote it had been house-sitting, just like me. They warned anyone who found the letter to leave immediately. There was something in the house, something that wouldn't let them leave. My chest tightened. That night, I heard the footsteps again, louder this time. Pacing closer like someone or something was right outside my bedroom door. I stayed still, barely breathing. The door didn't move, but I felt it. Something was there, just waiting. I realized the truth the next day. The noises weren't just the house. It wasn't just some ghost. Something was in the walls. I don't know how long they had been there or what they wanted, but I wasn't staying to find out. I packed my things and left before the sun set, never looking back. The house still stands, and I wonder if it's still waiting. When I agreed to house sit for a friend in their quiet suburban neighborhood, I thought it would be an easy gig. The street was calm, the houses all neatly lined up, and the kind of peaceful silence that's supposed to make you feel safe. The first few days were fine. I'd go about my day, read, watch TV, and go to bed without a second thought. It wasn't until I started noticing the neighbor that things got weird. Every night, like clockwork, I'd see the person across the street standing at their window. They never moved, never waved, just stared. At first, I tried to ignore it, thinking maybe they were just a night owl or something. But night after night, there they were, looking straight at me. I would close the curtains and try not to think about it, but it was hard not to feel uneasy. One evening, after locking up, I noticed something that made my heart race. Muddy footprints. They led from the back door into the house, but I hadn't gone outside all day. I froze. The realization that someone might have been inside hit me hard. My chest tightened, and I grabbed the nearest thing I could, a kitchen knife. I listened, standing still in the kitchen, when I heard it, a soft creak, like someone shifting their weight on the floor upstairs. I swallowed hard and slowly made my way up the stairs, trying to be quiet. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking into something I wasn't ready to face. But when I reached the top, there was nothing. I checked the rooms, my grip on the knife tight, my hands shaking. The only thing out of place was a window I was sure I had closed earlier, now wide open. Cold air rushed in, chilling my skin. The next morning, I decided I needed to do something. I crossed the street to the neighbor's house, determined to ask why they kept watching me. But when they opened the door, I was met with silence. They just stood there, staring at me with a blank expression and an unsettling smile. No words, just that eerie grin. I didn't know what to say, so I left, feeling more confused and on edge than ever. Later that day, I went to check the back door again and noticed something I hadn't seen before. Scratches, deep ones, on the frame like someone had been trying to pry it open. My stomach turned. It wasn't just the footprints. Someone had really tried to get inside. That night, I was more on edge than usual. I made sure all the doors and windows were locked tight, but when I glanced out the window, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The neighbor wasn't standing at their usual spot. Instead, I saw a figure standing in my backyard, staring right into the house. I raced to double-check the locks, my hands trembling. Every door, every window, I made sure nothing could be opened. But when I looked outside again, the figure was gone. I called the homeowner, my voice shaky, and told them everything. There was a long pause before they spoke. That's when I learned the truth. The house had a history of break-ins, multiple times the same thing. Someone would get inside, but no one ever saw how they got in or out. The owners never figured it out, and now it was happening to me. I haven't seen the neighbor since that night, but every time I walk past the back door, I check the scratches, reminding myself that someone, or something, is still watching.